Okay, so we took some photos of the dumpster outside, right behind the wall over here, and they're awesome. The neat thing about it is all the history and things that we can do to bring some separation of what each dumpster is. When they came in, they were brand new. They didn't have any of these scratches or anything, but now we've got a lot of history and story in here. And each one has its own character. They have different colored lids, they have different stickers, they got different rust patterns, different damages. And so we want to take these into zBrush, model it out so we can actually high poly it up and make and beat it up and put some nice little awesome textures into it. And eventually we'll get into Substance and paint it up, and then we'll have it in Max ready to go into Engine. So what we're going to do is start with a brand new scene in zBrush, and most of the work is going to be in here because the stickers and all that stuff you can do in Substance pretty quick. So what I want to make sure is So what I want to do is just go ahead and just get the sculpting started. We're going to start in with just a regular tool. I'm in the tool menu over here. If I click on this, it gives you a pop-up. When you guys start brand new, when you guys probably have the light box open, just like this, that's right here. Just click on that, I'll get rid of that. There's a whole bunch of awesome stuff in here. Don't be shy about playing around in there. It's fun. But we're going to start off with a basic cylinder or cube because we're going to convert it real quick. I'm left click and dragging, and then I'm going to hit T before I do anything else.
So we're going into tool to get the...
Yeah, you go into tool to grab that, and then you want to make sure that when you draw it in, you hit T to go to edit mode right here so that you can actually get into the 3D space. Because right now what you're doing is you're drawing in 2.5D.
Sorry, is that the image plane cube or the poly cube?
It doesn't really matter because we're going to convert it to a different object. The thing about zBrush, because it doesn't matter which tool you're using, because right now, once I'm in this edit mode, you got this gray box in your actual viewport. Once I see that, I can actually change the tool to anything I want using the little pop-up. I just need to get into the edit mode to get into these tools. That's the key. So here we are with Cube 3D, whatever. It says here I'm trying to sculpt on the mesh, and it says I need to turn this into a polymesh 3D object. And that's just right up here above the tool menu. Right here it says make polymesh. I click on that, and it's going to convert the cube from a primitive to an actual polymesh, which allows me to sculpt and play with it. It's very low poly, so not a lot of effects being seen on it. Control Z to undo that. And what I want to do is get into the actual modeling tools. So I go down here to the initialize in my menu. I'm just left click and holding to drag it up. The menu acts real funky, so be wary on it. But if it disappears, you can find it again. Most of the time, if you take a look at here, like here's the tool menu, but it's also the same as the pull down right here. So if you think you lose a menu, it's going to be up here in these pull downs that you see right here. Real easy stuff. All right, so I'm going to go into initialize, and I got all these things that should say cube, cube sphere, cube grid, so on and so forth. These are the cube models, and this is what we want to use. Cube. The reason why we're starting with this object is because it's just like the edit poly tools in 3ds Max, okay? And that makes it easier for you guys to understand what's going on here. The dumpster is a very, very boxy object, so that keeps it real simple, and we can kind of work with that real quick. So the thing about this to keep in mind, all these different colors, those are called polygroups. All right, I want to talk about this real quick and try to just introduce it. You don't have to be super on top of it yet, but you're going to be using polygroups all the time, especially with this QMesh and the ZModeling tools. Polygroups are just, if you kind of think of them kind of like what you would use material IDs in Substance, that kind of separate polygons as we need them. They're kind of irrelevant and arbitrary in terms of what the color is. I can actually hit Control W and change the entire object to one single polygroup. What's important about that is that each polygroup gives me a set of selections to choose from when I'm actually getting into the modeling tools. So just kind of have that right there, and then we'll get into it a little bit more. Let's get into the brush, and we want to go into the ZModeler. ZModeler brush is really easy to get into. Just click on that. Another way you can get into the brush, once the brush menu is open, which is B on your keyboard, you can hit ZModeler. So I'm going to hit Z, and it's going to hone down it's basically like a search refinement tool. And now I got everything that has Z on it. And then I look at there and there's ZModeler. I hit M, which is what the orange highlight right there. If I hit P, it's going to take me to Z project. So I hit B, whoopsie, B, Z, and M. Now I'm at ZModeler. And you just want to make sure you have these tools here. Now, these tools give us a whole set of things that you will recognize from 3ds Max. If I put my mouse over the object, take a look at what's happening here. You can see how there's a polygon, there's an edge, and I can get to the vertex. Once I'm over any one of these sub-objects, I hit spacebar and I get all the Z modeling tools. And what I want to do here is do an action, and we're using QMesh first, which is fine, on a certain kind of something, whether it's a single poly or a flat group and a poly group, which is what I use a lot, which is flat, which means like it's on the same angle. All the normals all face the same angle, and it's also by poly group. You can also do poly group all, which means that anytime I have a poly group, I grab this, I can just click and drag, and it's going to create more geometry. It's just like an extrusion. I have X on. Remember we talked about X in the actual symmetry tool. I want to have X on because that makes things happen. So now I'm sitting just building on each poly group. You see how each poly group has a different color. I can just click and drag and make things happen. Now, if I don't want to move things like in that order, I can come over here and hit spacebar and just hit single poly. And here's a really cool, quick way of doing this. And this is actually real common, or at least for me. I'm going to hit Control W and turn everything into a same poly group. Now what I'm going to do is hold Alt and left click and create a new poly group. I'm going to do that again with X on. Symmetry. Is it symmetry? Oh, it's on Y. Let's see. Is that Y symmetry? That's cool. Let's see. Transform. The transform tool is where your symmetries are. Have fun with these things. All right. Just kind of play around with it. Go take your time with it. Let's go ahead and just build off the X axis. Shift P will show us the ground plane. It'll kind of show me what's going on. So it looks like I'm mirroring on the Z axis, but it's the X axis. That's interesting. Sweet. All right. Well, I'm gonna keep going anyway. So hold Alt. I select a new set of polygons. And I just click and drag, and now I'm using off of these polygons, poly groups, excuse me. Control W converts everything to the same poly group. You can go into the poly group and kind of click on buttons, poly groups. You can click on by normals, and you'll get a different result. Shift P to hide the floor. And then you can group visible. Now this is another thing. Okay, so if we got do we all have kind of a funky shape yet? Because this is what I want you to work on when we're working on this stuff. Let me do this again. I'm going to group by normals. All right, so I know I haven't made a dump sheet yet, but all I'm doing is kind of playing with the shapes. I've got a whole bunch of different poly groups, and this is really cool because this is what the neat thing is of how ZBrush works real well. The reason why I like poly groups is I can hold Control and Shift, and now I'm in the selection tool sets. I'm still holding Control Shift. I'm in selection tool sets. So what it allows me to do, if I can just click on here, it's going to hide everything that's not that poly group. So now I can focus on just these sub-objects. All right. If I want them back, hold Control Shift, and I can click in space. If I want to click on that again, now I'm going to click and drag and just drag arbitrarily. I have yet to let go of Control Space. I have a new set of poly groups, the inverted of my last selection. Why is that important? Because let's say that I want to go in here, and I'm going to hold Control Shift and get rid of those as well. I'm going to get rid of those. Oopsie. That's fine. I'm going to get rid of those. And now I'm going to hit Control and invert my selection. I can come in here and start actually making a new poly group out of things. Hold Shift. I'm getting rid of objects and hiding things. So now I have just these faces selected. I'm holding Alt, so I'm still in the ZBrush tool set. I can select new faces and then hold Control Shift and click on that. Let's see. Whoop. Come on. There we go. Boop. Now I can, oopsie, I can poly group these guys together. So poly group visible. All right, hold Control Shift, and I can poly group these guys visible. So now I have just these guys focused on. So I can quickly change what I'm focusing on. Does that make sense? it seems kind of arbitrary, but once you start running into it and flying through it, it starts to make more sense. So I'm going to stop this video here. I'm just going to post this, but what we want you to do is just get this thing going. I want you to get into an object, create a poly group, start building up shapes. The other thing I want you to look at, as well as the Control Shift, if you just hold Control Mask, it's just like a mask in Photoshop. It's kind of hard to work with when it's really low poly though, because it has this fall off right here. But if I can go into the poly group, I can group masks. There we go. So now I have these groups separated. And if I hold Control and click in the space, it'll invert the selection. If I click and drag, it'll undo the mask. All right. So those are the two things to work on and think about. We'll get into reasons why as you do it, but you need to learn how the thing happens, because later on you'll be using it ridiculous amounts of times.